Elena Marlowe had been preparing for this moment her entire life. At just 16 years old, she was already considered one of the most gifted young ballet dancers in her state. Her discipline, her grace, and her almost haunting presence on stage made her stand out from the rest. When she arrived at the National Ballet Competition in Chicago, her teachers and classmates were convinced she was destined to win. The theater buzzed with excitement, cameras flashed, and Elena took the stage. With flawless poise, the audience erupted in applause, completely unaware it would be the last time they would ever see her perform. Backstage, Elena seemed calm, even glowing with relief after her performance. Several fellow dancers recalled how she smiled and whispered, "I think I finally did it," before heading to her dressing room. But when the competition ended and the awards ceremony began, Elena was nowhere to be found. At first, people assumed she had stepped outside for air or was speaking with her parents. But as minutes stretched into hours, unease crept in. The judges delayed the announcement, and her teachers searched frantically through every hallway of the theater. Security footage later confirmed that Elena never returned to her dressing room. Her makeup bag, water bottle, and even her jacket were left untouched inside. The only thing missing was her phone, and it had been powered off minutes after her performance. Investigators would later call this one of the strangest they had ever encountered, because there was no sign of struggle. No witnesses who had seen her leave openly, and no trace of her on the main cameras. It was as though she had simply slipped through the cracks of the building. But a few witnesses did recall something odd. One dancer claimed she saw Elena in the far backstage corridor speaking to a tall figure dressed in dark clothing. The lighting was dim, and no one could identify who it was. Another witness swore they heard the stage door slam around the same time, but assumed it was just a crew member leaving for the night. In hindsight, those details became the last confirmed moments of Elena's presence inside the theater. By midnight, panic set in. Police were called, and the theater was sealed off. Search dogs were brought in, but the trail seemed to end at the side exit near the alley. Elena's parents stood outside the venue in shock, begging for answers as officers combed the area. To everyone there, it didn't feel like an ordinary disappearance. It felt orchestrated, planned with precision. Someone had been waiting for her, watching her. And when the curtain fell that night, Elena Marlowe stepped out of the spotlight and into a mystery that would haunt the city for months to come. The search for Elena began immediately, and it was unlike anything the community had seen before. Her disappearance wasn't just another missing persons case, it struck a nerve with the public. Because Elena had become a symbol of discipline, beauty, and youth. Volunteers flooded the city streets, stapling posters to every lamppost, bus, stop, and storefront. Her face, with its delicate smile and determined eyes, seemed to watch over Chicago within days, haunting those who saw it. News crews aired urgent reports, and social media lit up with hashtags demanding her safe return. But despite the massive attention, the investigation produced little more than shadows. Detectives worked around the clock, combing through hours of surveillance footage from the competition venue. Most of the tapes revealed nothing unusual. Moving backstage, parents waiting nervously in the lobby, staff carrying equipment. But then, a grainy clip caught everyone's attention. Elena walking down a dimly lit hallway toward the side exit. Just a few feet ahead of her, a hooded figure lingered in the corner, waiting. Elena paused, turned as if she recognized the person, and then followed. The footage ended as the pair slipped out of view. Strangely, every camera beyond that point had either malfunctioned or been deliberately disabled. Police immediately began questioning the staff and competitors, desperate for anyone who could identify the hooded figure. Some speculated it was a fellow dancer, others suggested a stagehand, and whispers even spread that it might have been someone Elena knew, personally. Rumors spiraled online, with strangers dissecting her final performance, her friendships, and even her social media posts for hidden clues. Her family begged the public to stop spreading conspiracies, but the silence from investigators only fueled the wildfire of speculation. The most chilling aspect of the case was how quickly the trail went cold. Search dogs brought to the theater picked up Elena's scent near the side exit, but it vanished abruptly in the alleyway, as if she had been lifted off the ground or placed directly into a vehicle. Nearby businesses had security cameras, but none of them showed Elena leaving the alley. It was as if she had stepped through a doorway into thin air. Investigators theorized that her abductor had studied the building's layout carefully and chosen the one blind spot in the city's web of cameras. Meanwhile, Elena's parents lived every parent's nightmare. They drove to every tip, followed every lead, and answered every late-night call, only to be met with disappointment. They pleaded with reporters on live television, begging whoever had taken their daughter to return her safely. The city's atmosphere grew heavier with each passing day. What made Elena's disappearance so terrifying wasn't just that she was gone. It was that someone had managed to erase her without leaving a trace. And no one could explain how. 2 months after Elena's disappearance, when hope had already begun to flicker and fade, a chilling development shook the case. On a quiet morning, Elena's parents found an envelope sitting neatly inside their mailbox. No postage, no return address, no fingerprints. It hadn't been delivered by the postal service. Someone had placed it there by hand. Inside was a long pink ballet ribbon tied into a perfect bow. Beneath it, written in thin black ink on a sheet of paper, were the words, "She dances still, but not for you." The handwriting was sharp, deliberate, and oddly elegant. Her parents collapsed with grief and terror. This was the first undeniable proof that someone out there had her. Detectives immediately seized the letter, hoping it contained forensic evidence. But the results were frustrating. No fingerprints, no DNA, no smudges. Whoever had written it had worn gloves, used special ink, and taken extreme care not to leave behind even the smallest trace. The ballet ribbon itself, however, was confirmed to be one of Elena's. Her mother recognized the faded stitching where she had once sewn it for practice. The discovery suggested that Elena was still alive at the time the ribbon was taken, and that her captor wanted to remind everyone of their control. Weeks later, another envelope arrived, this time slid under the family's front door late at night. Inside was one of Elena's earrings, small silver, and heart-shaped, the very pair she had worn on stage the night she vanished. Alongside it was a scrap of music sheet paper with a single sentence scrawled across it: "Every performance has an audience." The cryptic message terrified detectives, who began to suspect the kidnapper was not only taunting the family but also suggesting that Elena was being forced to dance for someone, somewhere in secret. The letters created chaos within the investigation. On one hand, they proved that Elena had likely been alive for at least some time after her disappearance. On the other, they revealed how dangerously calculated her abductor was. Detectives feared the person wasn't acting impulsively but rather treating the entire ordeal like a twisted performance, each letter a carefully timed act designed to instill maximum dread. The media seized on this angle, dubbing the case the Ballet Phantom. Conspiracy theories exploded online. Some claimed it was a stalker from the dance world. Others suggested a secret admirer obsessed with her art. But none of these theories led anywhere concrete. For Elena's family, the letters were pure torment. Every time the phone rang or a knock sounded at the door, they froze in dread, wondering if another envelope had come. They were trapped in a nightmare where hope and despair clashed daily because, as long as the letters kept arriving, there was a chance Elena was alive. But the cruel reality was clear. Whoever had her wasn't planning on letting her go. And, with each new message, the shadow around her disappearance grew darker and more terrifying. Nearly 4 months into the investigation, when the trail had all but gone cold, an unexpected witness came forward. A janitor who had worked at the competition theater the night Elena vanished contacted police with something he claimed had been bothering him for months. Nervously, he described seeing a man carrying a large, heavy duffel bag out of the building, through a service entrance just after the competition ended. The janitor recalled the man struggling with the weight of the bag, adjusting it on his shoulder before loading it into a dark-colored van parked by the loading docks. At the time, he assumed it was just stage equipment, but after hearing about the missing dancer, the memory left him shaken. Detectives immediately latched onto the janitor's testimony. The description of the van was vague: dark, possibly black or navy blue, with no visible license plate, but it was the most concrete lead they had in weeks. Police canvassed nearby traffic cameras, hoping to trace the van's route. But much like the surveillance inside the theater, every relevant angle seemed to be either obscured or malfunctioning that night. To investigators, it appeared deliberate, as though someone had carefully studied which cameras to avoid. The theory began forming that Elena's disappearance had been meticulously planned, long before she ever stepped on stage. Following the janitor's lead, police tracked down records of delivery vans and rentals in the area. This search led them to a warehouse on the outskirts of the city, registered under a shell company with no legitimate business. The warehouse had been abandoned for years, but neighbors reported seeing a van matching the description parked outside on multiple occasions. When detectives finally raided the building, they found it nearly empty except for one chilling detail. On the far wall, nailed into a wooden beam, was a single worn ballet shoe. Its size and style matched Elena's, and it had been pierced cleanly through the sole with a rusty nail. As though pinned there deliberately. The discovery sent shockwaves through the investigation. The shoe appeared staged, left behind like some kind of grotesque calling card. Forensic teams scoured the warehouse, but once again, the abductor had left nothing traceable, no fingerprints, no fibers, no blood. The only unsettling detail was a faint scent of perfume lingering in the air, one that Elena's mother would later confirm was her daughter's. This suggested Elena had been inside the warehouse at some point. Though no one could determine if she had been alive at the time, detectives began to fear the case wasn't just a kidnapping, it was a performance crafted by someone who wanted to be watched. Step by step, the media swarmed the story of the ballet shoe at the warehouse, and the public's fear only deepened. Rumors spread of a sadistic collector who staged scenes with his victims, turning their lives into macabre art. For Elena's family, the discovery offered both hope and despair. On one hand, it was proof their daughter had been there. On the other, it raised horrifying questions. Was she still alive? Was she being held somewhere even worse? Or had the shoe been left as a cruel symbol that her story was nearing its tragic end? Whatever the answer, one thing became terrifyingly clear: whoever had taken Elena was still out there, and they were playing a game only they understood. 8 months after Elena's disappearance, when many had begun to lose hope, a landfill worker stumbled upon something that reignited the investigation in the most horrifying way. On an ordinary morning, while shifting piles of trash with a bulldozer, his blade struck against a small wooden object. Curious, he climbed down to inspect it and found a delicate, dust-covered music box. The box was painted with tiny ballerinas, twirling in faded pink tutus, their faces eerily scratched out as though someone had defaced them intentionally. When he opened it, the haunting melody of Swan Lake began to play, but inside, tangled in the gears, was a piece of fabric soaked with old, dried blood. The worker immediately called police, and the landfill was shut down for the rest of the day. Forensic experts carefully removed the fabric and confirmed it was part of a ballet costume, the same shimmering lavender dress Elena had worn during her final performance on stage. The discovery stunned investigators. The costume had been missing since the night she vanished, and now, months later, it had surfaced in a place meant for discarded, forgotten things. It was as though the abductor had chosen the landfill deliberately, sending yet another message: Elena's beauty, her art, her life reduced to waste. Detectives traced the landfill's intake logs and quickly discovered that the trash containing the music box had come from a luxury apartment complex in downtown Chicago. The building catered to wealthy professionals, and its pristine lobby and marble floors were a far cry from the grimy landfill where the box ended up. Yet buried deep within its discarded garbage had been one of the most important clues of the entire case. Investigators began sifting through the complex's residents, searching for anyone with a possible connection to Elena, the ballet world, or the warehouse where her shoe had been found. When detectives interviewed tenants, many claimed they had never even heard of Elena's disappearance, but a few recalled seeing a man who kept to himself. Someone described as quiet, distant, and odd. He rarely interacted with neighbors, and he almost never used the main lobby entrance, preferring instead to slip in and out through the parking garage late at night. Maintenance workers confirmed that his apartment had always been locked tight, and he never let staff inside, even for routine inspections. The secrecy surrounding him painted a chilling picture, one that matched the profile investigators had been building of a meticulous abductor. Still, what disturbed detectives the most wasn't just the discovery of the blood-stained costume, it was the music box itself. On the underside of the lid, carved so faintly it could only be seen under bright light, were 3 words: "Encore, my star." It wasn't just a message, it was a signature, proof that the abductor wanted to remind everyone this was far from over. For the first time, investigators realized the case wasn't only about control or obsession, it was about performance. Someone out there was staging every step like a show, and Elena was the unwilling centerpiece of a macabre production that hadn't yet reached its final act. Following the trail from the landfill, investigators obtained a warrant to search the luxury apartment linked to the discarded music box. When officers forced open the door, they expected to find a neat but ordinary residence. Instead, they were confronted with something that felt less like a home and more like a shrine. Every wall was lined with photographs of Elena, some professional shots from her competitions, others candid images that seemed to have been taken without her knowledge. Enlarged prints of her final performance covered the living room, arranged with meticulous care, as though the abductor had been curating his own private gallery. The deeper they searched, the more disturbing the scene became. In the bedroom stood a full-sized mannequin, dressed in a replica of Elena's lavender competition costume. A plastic tiara rested crookedly on its head, and the mannequin's arms were positioned in a ballet pose, frozen mid-dance. The drawers contained boxes of makeup identical to what Elena used, stacks of unopened ballet ribbons, and pairs of satin pointe shoes in her exact size. It was as though the abductor had tried to reconstruct her life inside these four walls, piece by piece, creating a twisted stage where she was both idolized and imprisoned. In the kitchen, investigators found something even more chilling. Inside the refrigerator, neatly labeled containers held strands of hair tied with ribbons, fingernail clippings, and scraps of fabric. DNA testing would later confirm that the hair and nails belonged to Elena. Detectives were horrified. The apartment was not just a shrine, but a place of collection. Every detail suggested the abductor had been keeping trophies, preserving fragments of her existence as though cataloging the evolution of his obsession. On a desk near the window sat a laptop, left powered on but locked with heavy encryption. Forensic analysts would eventually discover hidden folders containing hours of ballet footage downloaded from competitions across the country. Yet Elena was always the central figure. Among the files was something even more unsettling: scanned copies of the mysterious letters sent to her parents. The abductor had kept records of his own tormenting messages, as if reliving the satisfaction of each cruel delivery. Detectives realized the apartment wasn't simply where he lived, it was his control room, the backstage area of his disturbing performance. But the most haunting discovery was tucked away in the closet. There, stacked neatly against the wall, were multiple small wooden music boxes, identical to the one found at the landfill. Each one was painted differently, some unfinished, others cracked open to reveal hidden compartments. It was clear the abductor had been preparing for something larger, a series of performances that hadn't yet been revealed. Though every detail screamed of Elena's presence, there was still one horrifying question left unanswered. Where was she now? Among the disturbing items pulled from the apartment, the most crucial piece of evidence came from the landfill discovery: the music box. While investigators had already noted the blood-stained costume inside, a second, more detailed inspection revealed something they had overlooked: a hidden compartment beneath the rotating ballerina platform. It was a tiny slot, sealed so tightly it required specialized tools to open. When it was finally pried apart, detectives uncovered a small USB drive, wrapped carefully in black tape as if it had been deliberately hidden for later discovery. Forensic analysts immediately rushed the drive into examination, and what they found was more horrifying than anything uncovered so far. The USB contained only a single video file, simply titled Rehearsal. When investigators pressed play, the footage flickered to life, revealing a dimly lit room with cracked walls and a single spotlight fixed on the center. There, wearing the same lavender costume from her final performance, was Elena. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow with fear, yet she moved gracefully across the floor, performing ballet steps as though being directed. A distorted voice echoed faintly in the background. Whispering commands, she followed without hesitation. The video was short, less than 2 minutes, and ended abruptly when the camera fell sideways, leaving only muffled laughter and the scrape of footsteps fading into the darkness. But for investigators, those 2 minutes were enough to confirm the unthinkable. Elena had been alive for some time after her disappearance, forced to perform in captivity. What made the footage even more chilling was the sound of clapping faintly audible at the very end, as if an unseen audience had been watching and applauding her every move. This wasn't simply a kidnapping, it was theater, staged for someone's perverse satisfaction. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. Detectives worked tirelessly to trace the metadata of the video, hoping to pinpoint where it had been filmed. But like everything else in this case, the abductor had been meticulous. The file contained no GPS data, no device information, no traceable footprint at all. The only clue was the background: a faded mural of swans painted across the wall, partially chipped and peeling. Investigators scoured abandoned buildings across the city, looking for a match, but none surfaced. The swan mural became the last haunting symbol of Elena's captivity. Even more unsettling was the realization that the USB drive had been hidden inside the music box and discarded at the landfill intentionally. It was never meant to be overlooked. Whoever orchestrated this wanted the police, the family, and the world to see Elena in that room. To witness her forced performance. It was a message, a finale to the twisted act the abductor had carefully staged for months. And yet, despite all the evidence, Elena herself remained missing, her body never found, her voice never heard again. The video was the last living trace of her, leaving investigators and her family with a question more haunting than death itself. Was she still out there, dancing in the shadows for an audience no one could see? And so, Elena Marlowe's disappearance remains one of the most haunting mysteries in recent memory. A girl who was destined to shine on the world's brightest stages, instead became the centerpiece of a nightmare trapped in a performance she never chose. The music box, the letters, the mannequin, the video. Every clue revealed pieces of a story too dark to imagine, yet never complete enough to bring closure. To this day, no one knows what became of Elena. Did her captor keep her alive in some hidden place, forced to dance for an audience that would never step forward? Or was the final video nothing more than a cruel recording of her last performance, staged to torment those searching for her? The questions remain unanswered, the truth forever just out of reach. What is certain is that someone out there orchestrated this as carefully as a ballet itself, each act a calculated move. Each discovery another step in a performance designed to terrify. Elena vanished behind the curtain that night. And though the stage has long since gone dark, her story continues to echo like a haunting melody. Somewhere, perhaps, the music box still plays. Somewhere, perhaps, the show never truly ended.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.